Tulsi's the one.
Oh, Matt, what's up? Sometimes you just like book them right. Goodness gracious. So Tulsi was just on, and then they dropped the Durham report, the Durham annex. You know the scandal better than virtually anyone alive because you were in Congress fighting against it day and night. And one of the
Just say it, Benny. Just say it. I peaked during the Russia hoax. Okay?
You did. You called these bastards out to their face.
During the Russia hoax, and now it's back in the news. But could we just take a moment and reflect on the fact that, like, John Durham wrote this whole report, came and testified before Congress, and apparently all of the bangers were in an appendix that we had to win an election and then get control of the FBI and CIA in order to read? Like, in what? If Donald Trump had not won this election, you would never even have seen this stuff. And we endured years of the media saying I was Vladimir Putin's lawyer, Trump was Vladimir Putin's agent, that there were these tapes and this compromising material, and the whole thing was cooked up by the Clinton campaign, and it didn't work. And then after it didn't work, when they were trying to manipulate the media and convince us all that, like, you know, we would be raising the Russian flag over the White House if Donald Trump won, after it didn't work, Obama himself ordered a hit on the Republic, on American democracy, when on December 9th of 2016, he got everybody together and he said, look, go back, redo these assessments. And he gave the message to Clapper and Brennan that they were to create this predicate, and that Comey would then be the inside man still in the Trump administration to pull the levers of government to try to destabilize this presidency. And somehow, through all of this, Donald Trump got his tax cuts, preserved peace in the world, backed down Kim in North Korea, and gave us some of the greatest prosperity any of us have known in our lives up to the COVID deal. And so it's quite a moment, but it also shows, like, how dogged you have to be to get this stuff. Is no one outraged over the fact that John Durham gave hours of public testimony and we're just getting this stuff now?
Yeah, but, like, can you please elucidate for us? I'm sure you haven't had the opportunity to read these thousands of documents that just broke seconds ago. But do you have any top line information that you've learned?
Yeah, other members and staff have seen this stuff, you know, before today. And the core of it is that the beginning of the Russia hoax was not George Papadopoulos in some London bar. It wasn't some belief that there were secret Trump, Putin channels of communications through Eric Prince in the Seychelles. That the whole thing was, in fact, cooked up and sold to donors such as Soros and the Open Society Foundation as a political mechanism. Just like if you and I were involved in a campaign, we would say, okay, well, we're really going to attack this candidate based on their views on energy, right? And we would develop memos about that, and we would go talk to reporters about what we thought about that candidate's views on energy, right? But here they went to the Russia thing. I guess because that was easier than campaigning in the Great Lakes Stakes and going to Wisconsin. I mean, it's so crazy to think about. But they did that here, and then they injected it into the intelligence community with the help of some of these pseudo political operatives and high-ranking officials at DOJ, CIA, and FBI. So that's what you're going to see: the correspondence that ran on the rails of communication, the pitch to financiers. Because remember, the original guy who walked this into the FBI was John McCain. You know, this was a deal that some Rubio donor had cooked up, and then McCain walks it in, and it's kind of dismissed. And then the DNC picks it up because they say, whoa, this is something we can really pour the gas on and get to be a central focus of the campaign. Turns out people just wanted closed borders and an economy that worked.
So tell me, I just went to community college, Matt, so help me through this. We've heard for a decade now that President Trump paid the Russians to help him win and rig the election in 2016. Am I just understanding this as a simpleton? It was the exact opposite, that Hillary Clinton was using Russian disinformation. These are Russian spies. Christopher Steele's sanctioned by, working for and being paid by a sanctioned Russian oligarch. All of this disinformation about President Trump came literally from Russia. and that was Hillary Clinton's campaign that was merchandising it, and the FBI that was then laundering it to the CIA and to the press and the media. So it was actually them working with the Russians in order to attack Trump.
That's right. That's exactly right. The media and the FBI were white labeling Russian dirt that was being assembled by foreign spies who hated Trump, paid for by the DNC. That is what happened. And
how is that not treasonous?
Those things, they called us crazy. They said, like, how dare we question the integrity or the viewpoint of how Robert Mueller is looking at this investigation. We had Republicans saying that. We had Trey Gowdy and the like saying, just let Mueller do his job and this will all be great. Where was Mueller investigating the Russians that were assembling the Steele dossier? That's my question. I mean, if Mueller was supposed to investigate the Russian interference in the election, what you just learned from this annex is that it was the Democrats and it was the elements of our own government at President Obama's direction that were white labeling Russian dirt in order to try to sway voters, and then after voters would not be swayed, to literally try to sway a presidency. They prosecuted Trump for taking home some documents. Barack Obama tried to take home the whole presidency. I think there has to be accountability for this. Here's the real strategy question going forward, though, Benny. This is all documents, right? And evidence takes two forms, documents and witnesses. How good are the witnesses? Can they withstand cross-examination? Would you put them before the House Judiciary Committee and Jamie Raskin? Would you put them on the stand if you wouldn't be willing to subject them to rigorous review? How do they come across? How do they look? These are all things that I think Jamie Comer knows. They're things that the Justice Department and the DNI probably know. We'll all find out how good those witnesses are, I think, in the coming weeks and months.
So now if you have these documents, and you mentioned the Soros Foundation, so you're saying that the Soros Foundation, and forgive me, Matt, we're just reading them live on air here. You have a spectacular live show as well on One American News, but we're reading them live on air. Am I to understand that this is implicating the Soros Foundation in assistance in paying for all this? Because it was very expensive to do this operation. It cost millions of dollars in order to run this operation through Fusion GPS, Christopher Steele, and so on. I mean, is there going to be legal culpability potentially for George Soros here?
The challenge with that is so much of this money is like disaggregated, fungible. And so what happens in politics is that when people feel like they've got a really compelling pitch to donors, that there's a great ad that will really cut through if we only had another $1 million to put it on TV, or there's this great candidate, and if we just gave them the right funding, they would secure this important position of power. And in this case, what appears to have happened is that the Debbie Wasserman Schultz DNC apparatus was trying to seduce the Soros operation into really funding a lot of the information operation around this. And whether or not you could tie those specific funds then into those ops, I don't see that in the docs yet. Still a lot to review. But I think the solicitation of the Soros Foundation to do this shows like that's not how you run a counter intel op. That's not how you run a criminal investigation. That's how you run a political smear campaign, and showcasing that tradecraft, I think, further indicts the Brennan viewpoint that all of this needed to be included in the official work product of our government.
Well, it should be enough for a subpoena, right? Like that, having the name dropped in there and having.
Did you put Brennan there? Hey, by the way, here's a fair question. How come John Brennan never had to testify in public about this stuff? I asked him questions behind closed doors, but I begged our leadership, Brennan, Clapper, Comey, no more of these behind closed doors depots. Let's drag these guys in front of the country and ask them the questions that are on the minds of regular folks. And all I could get was the behind closed door deposition. That may turn out to be one of the predicate criminal acts in the conspiracy, Brennan's perjury to my questions about his involvement in the Steele dossier. Wow. But I think it's a fair question for Republicans to ask. We've got this majority. Why don't we take it out for a spin?
So wait a second. You're telling me that Republican leadership kneecapped you back when this was all rolling, when I assume, would it be Paul Ryan in charge of the House?
No. I mean, these were decisions that were made, during the current ruling regime of the Republican structure. And here's what I was told when I said, look, Benny, the investigation was about the 51 intelligence officials that signed the letter that said that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation. And so we interviewed a lot of those people in private, and they said some very interesting things, and we released the transcripts. But that's nothing like having to have people answer live questions, Republicans and Democrats from both sides. And what I was told is that we would look potentially mean and retaliatory to be going after people for their political conduct.
This is Smash Mouth.
What I was told.
Man, we're fighting communists, dude. Like, this is Smash Mouth. Like, what is going on?
Well, by the way, how are we supposed to win a war against these people when they're using the imprimatur of their security clearance and their government role to go and tell lies about Hunter Biden's laptop and Donald Trump? And when we ask them tough questions, we look like the mean guys, and so we're not going to do it. I was very opposed to that decision that was made. I voiced that viewpoint, and so I did the best I could. I showed up to all the behind closed doors depots. I did so when most of the members didn't. And I did what I could to ask the questions that would be on the minds of your viewers.
Would you mind elucidating for us where you think there was a perjury trap for Brennan, what you've gotten? And forgive us, sometimes, you guys release these transcripts. You release transcripts that are like 7,000 pages long. It's like so hard to get through.
Yeah, so here's the gist of it. I was like, look, man, how come you got all these people together to say that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation? What was your basis to say it was Russian disinformation? He said, my entire career of making decisions about Russia and their intelligence operations. I was like, oh, well, good. I've got one I'd like to ask you about, the Steele dossier, since you're such an expert in all things Russia. And his lawyers went nuts and said, well, we're not here to talk about Steele. We're here to talk about Hunter Biden. And I said, well, tough. You opened the door for it. And so since they opened the door, I proceeded on a line of questioning wherein Brennan said, I had nothing to do with any analysis of the Steele dossier. That was all the FBI. CIA had no role in this. No, we made no decision about its inclusion. And now you got, like, if you throw a rock at Langley, so it hits somebody who says that they thought the Steele dossier was trash, should not be included. And it was Brennan himself who overruled good people at the CIA who said this stuff was nonsense. So that is where he committed a predicate criminal act in furtherance of a broader conspiracy. And the tell from the Department of Justice that they're doing this the right way is they're not just pursuing these as individual criminal acts, because if you do that, you have to bring that case in Washington, D.C., where the jury system is like a leftist Ouija board. So if you have a conspiracy and any of these cats took a text message in Palm Beach, did a phone call when they were on a ski vacation in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, if they were sending an email from Virginia, then we're going to have the opportunity to venue a prosecution of the whole conspiracy where you may find any one predicate criminal act.
Such a critical question. We asked General Flynn this, and he was like, I'm really worried about getting out of, you have to get out of DC. You have to get out of the vectors of their control. And you have to get out of those jury pools. Okay, that's perfect. So, okay, when we're looking at this, how would you charge it, Matt? I mean, given the fact that they've lied to your face, one, I want to use this as a platform to bang my fist. Must Republicans bring these individuals forward to Congress to testify now? Like, is now the moment? Well, must it happen, or is that
look, we haven't seen these witnesses, Benny. We haven't seen them. And so there are certain people who are telling the truth, but just don't make good witnesses. That is the nature of performance art. And so only, the people behind the curtain right now know how good the witnesses are. And we're going to see the decision they make about how to utilize that evidence.
Okay. So, well, how would you charge it? Would you charge it as a criminal conspiracy against rights? That's what Mike Davis told us.
Yeah, I think that would be an element. I mean, look at what they charged everybody in January 6th over.
Seditious conspiracy.
Right? I mean,
seditious conspiracy. Yeah.
I think that what Obama did on December 9th, 2016 looks a lot more like seditious conspiracy to me than anything I saw on January 6th, 2021.
Great line. Okay, really quickly here, because you're one of the only people that would ever answer this question. None of these documents, I mean, including this document right here, this one's wild. This is Hillary Clinton approved the idea. This is straight from the Durham annex. Perhaps you've seen it, Matt, because you had a clearance, but I haven't. Okay. Hillary, my team is highlighting this as we're going live. Hillary Clinton approved the idea of Trump and Russia hackers hampering the U.S. elections and also distracting from her email attempts, also hacking the DNC. So the DNC hack, there's been zero evidence that the DNC hack came from the outside. An enormous amount of evidence that the DNC hack came from the inside. All of the emails, the Podesta emails, the satanic spirit cooking dinner stuff, Maria Abramovich, all this Hillary stuff, all that sick stuff, all of it came from the inside. And we haven't been able to get a straight answer on this, but all of these documents seem to point to that was part of the conspiracy, that the Russians hacked the DNC too. Your thoughts on this, Matt?
Yeah, and those can be predicate criminal acts, right? If they are lying to donors, like, you know, remember what they got Santos on, all these wire fraud things about the use of money and what promises were made to donors. So you could maybe access some of those wire fraud statutes based on how the money moved to fund some of this stuff. But yeah, I mean, what that is showing you is they had to run the political op by the candidate, right? And so Hillary Clinton's participation in the decision to pursue this narrative only mires in scandal all the people inside the government who are willing to go along with it.
All right, Matt, I know we're up against a hard out. Just one final question here. What do you expect? Can you give us a honest man's opinion, having seen the inside of this machine and knowing so very closely the Trump team and the president himself? What's going to happen? Like, prepare our audience, right? Like, what's going to happen? Right.
So if you're Clapper or Brennan or Comey or Obama, every time the phone rings, every time there's a knock at the door, every time you hear the leaves rustle on your stoop, you're wondering whether or not it's somebody serving you a subpoena or giving you notice of service that you're going to have to provide documents and potentially testimony to a grand jury. Decisions will have to be made by some really smart prosecutors like Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche about who to flip, who to give immunity to, that will be the narrator of this great conspiracy. Whenever you have a major conspiracy trial, you have to have a great narrator. And who's that going to be? Who maybe wants the opportunity to participate in the proceedings in that way. That's the next thing coming, the subpoenas, and then who flips.
And one more time, I'm not a betting man, but please handicap for us, Matt. Do you expect people will go to prison for this?
Well, look, I think that it's always difficult to get in front of the prosecutors who have to make some of these charging decisions, but a lot of that's going to come down to venue. I don't know whether or not some of these things happened outside of DC in jurisdictions where you can get a fair shake. We already had Andrew McCabe strung up, ready to go on lying to Congress, and there wasn't a grand jury that would even indict him in Washington, D.C. because of the nature of that deeply corrupt place. So I think that the venue question is what that will turn on.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'll take mugshots for right now. You know, I'll start with the low-hanging fruit, man. I'll take the mugshots.
Just nice hey, by the way, just nice to get the Durham annex here in 2025. Thank goodness. I wonder what annexes we're going to be getting in 2035, Benny. Maybe that's when we'll get. Maybe that's when we'll get the Benny Johnson Tim Pool annex. We'll wait till 2035 and learn.
That's right. I've been asking. What a filthy, dirty op, man. What a filthy, dirty op. I'm telling you, that thing stinks to high heavens. And the fact that they were sprinting to wrap it all up. FBI calling me, you're the victim of a crime. Okay, yeah, all right. We're
gonna learn in 2035 that Benny Johnson actually is Vladimir Putin. You just didn't know it the whole time.
And we're gonna learn today that Matt Gaetz is Neo from the Matrix, according to his cover image here on X. That is amazing. I think it's just Neo, dude. It's just Neo.
It's a COUP prison, magical place. I gotta run.
See you, Matt. Thank you, man. Everyone follow Matt Gaetz, obviously.